Hey everyone, and welcome to this video, Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life, for Blanchardstown Library and Fingal County Council. I hope that you'll find the tips in this video useful. And just to note that it's not a substitute for any form of counselling or therapy. So if for any reason you need any support like that in life, please do reach out to your GP or the appropriate resources to help you. So to optimize your learning, just a note on this, I always bring this to the table just so that we're, I suppose, on a good page in terms of our learning. So remember to keep your mind open and engage with the content as fully as possible. Identify and note down key points. So either in your head, if that's the way you do things, just to make a mental note of things, or ideally write them down in a notebook so that you don't forget them going forward. And the last thing, and the most important thing, is to start to review and apply what you've learned as soon as possible so that you get the optimum value out of the presentation. And of course, you can review it again at any time. So my name is Jill Barrett and I have a business called The Head Coach. I engage in a lot of coaching and training. And one thing that has always struck me over the years is how much that changing our thinking can alter our view and indeed the path of our life going forward. And I love this image. This is an image I took many years ago, a picture I took on my camera. It's of Enniscrone Beach in County Sligo. And I love the picture because it just brings me to a lovely place of calm. And when I was in my, I suppose, teens and 20s, you know, I realized at one point, I thought, gosh, you know, sometimes life is really putting it up to me. And what I discovered was, I discovered this book, actually, I just want to share you. And it's a very old book. And it says, stop thinking, start living. So stop thinking, start living, by a guy called Richard Carlson. And I realized that, I suppose, the secret to a happy life was not, in fact, all of the material things around me, or you know, how much money I would earn, or what a sort of job I would get, you know, my friends or my family or whatever. It was all about what was going on inside my head. And I suppose I was very lucky that happened at a particular point, because it meant I was able to carry that philosophy into my life going forward. And I wanted to share it with you, as I did in a 4-week session, 90 minutes a week with more than, I think it was 10 starting out, and I think we had 8 for the full course of the classes in Blanchardstown Library. And there was such good feedback from the sessions, and people found it so useful that I even, during COVID-19 lockdown, I had some nice messages from some of those participants saying how useful the techniques that they picked up were to them at that time. So I wanted to share some with you, and not an extensive amount, but just a couple of little nuggets that will perhaps help you in your life going forward. So as we look at this nice image, because it's nice to me, and that's my thinking around it, I just want you to think a little bit at the moment, or even just to rest in this moment and have a look at it and think about what comes to mind when you see it. So for me, it's calm, the sun is shining, so you know, I'm feeling sort of happy as I look at it. It's a memory for me of a nice time. And as you're looking at it, what I'd like you to do, just as a little experiment, so we're going to be doing lots of experiments during this short video. And the first one I want you to do is, you know, hopefully you either have a neutral or a nice feeling when you're looking at this, but you may not. But what I want you to do, just for the moment, and I'm not going to leave you in this place, but I just want you to call to mind a time that has been really difficult for you, okay? A time when, you know, things were not going well, you know, in your life. And I just want you to recall that time just for, you know, maybe 30 seconds or so, just as we're sitting here. So just to recall that time. I'm going to stop talking now and just going to let you have a think about that. And assuming you have something, most of us have had some little challenge in life. What I'd like you to do now, if that's coming to mind, is just really be there, okay? Really be there, the sights, the sounds, the smells, you know, who was there, you know, the feelings that you had. I just want you to rest in that just for a moment, okay? I'm not going to leave you there, just resting in that for a moment. Okay, and I'm guessing that perhaps you don't feel very good when you're thinking about that. So you don't feel very good thinking about that time and that challenge that faced you and all the things that were going on. Okay. And just think for a moment, we can't share. The reason I'm recording these videos at this time is because of COVID-19. We can't physically be together. So I just want you to, I suppose, bring to mind the other thoughts that might come into your head and the feelings and the emotions. So where do you feel it in your body? Okay, so if I was doing a class, I'd be saying, look, where do you feel it? And a lot of the time people say, look, I feel really down. I feel quite depressed when I think about it. I feel really low. I feel quite deflated. I have no energy. Physically, you can see they're either tensing or their shoulders are dropping and they're hunching a little. Their eyes get, you know, sad, and, you know, they're experiencing it very physically in their body. Okay, so I just want you to, you can put that to one side now. We can put that to one side. And now I want you to think about something else. I want you to think about a really, really lovely, happy time that you've had in your life. And some people have really had tough lives. But hopefully all of us, no matter how young we are, or what age we are, we'll have had some really happy time, or a time when we felt really good, really uplifted. And I want you to think about that time now, okay? And so just give you a moment again just to recall that. And maybe you've got loads of them, and maybe it's difficult to choose one, but just pick one that, you know, the one that springs to mind. There's usually one just knocking there, and just listen to that and see which thought it is. Just think about it for a moment. And again, as with the situation that challenged you, what I'd like you to do now is really live in that moment. So really, really, like, what sort of a day was it? Where were you? Who was there? What were the sights, the sounds, the tastes, the smells? You know, really be in your senses in that experience. So hopefully that's a nice experience for you. And hopefully as you sit there, you have lots of nice other thoughts about it, you know, that you were happy, that it was uplifting, it was one of your best days ever, you know, everyone was just getting on, and, you know, it felt really good, really right. Um, and also the, you know, where the emotions, you know, just how you feel it in your body, even the physical, you know, you might be sitting up a little bit straighter, you know, or standing up a little bit straighter as you're watching this. You might feel a little bit more relaxed than you did earlier. You might, you know, your shoulders might be dropping. You might be just, you know, feeling lighter in yourself. People often describe feeling lighter, feeling happy, feeling uplifted. And what I invite you to think is, what have we done? What has changed in these few moments about either of those situations? What has changed? And the thing is, nothing. Nothing has changed. You've just, and nothing has changed for you in this moment, you know. So whether you've been feeling a little bit sad and down and deflated, thinking the first thought, or uplifted and happy, the second thought, only one thing has changed, and that's your thinking. And so what we realize is that they say that, I don't know where the statistic comes from, about 95% of our thoughts are repetitive, and most of them are not true. So 95% of our thoughts are repetitive, and most of them are not true. So that's a very powerful idea, isn't it? A very powerful idea, because it means that every day I experience potentially a roller coaster of emotions, depending on what's going on in my life, how many people are in my life. how many scenarios I'm having to deal with, and so on. So the thought that I could just think, well, my thinking around all of this is actually causing me a lot of pain and a lot of challenge, then that's a very powerful thought, because that means if I am aware of that, then if I start to think about my thinking, I can get on top of a lot of the things that challenge me, and in fact, change the course of my life. Your life, of course, in a way, has no past, it has no future. We don't know. As Eckhart Tolle, the famous sort of spiritual guru, was always telling us, there is no past, there is no future, there's only now. So what we know is that life is just a series of moments. I can only ever be in this moment. So you can only ever be in the now. You can't be in tomorrow. You can't be in yesterday. And we have no proof that yesterday happened, and we have no way of knowing that tomorrow is coming. It's just the tomorrow and yesterday are just to do with dates in the calendar, but we're only ever in the now. So if my thinking in the now is either positive, as in, it's lifting me up, or it's neutral, as in I'm not attaching a meaning to something, well then I'm going to be healthier, I'm going to be happier. Shakespeare, the quote is, I paraphrase it slightly, his lovely line is, the day is neither good nor bad, our thinking makes it so. The day is neither good nor bad, our thinking makes it so. And Mark Twain as well said, he used to have lots of nightmarish, he has this nightmarish, sort of scenario where, he would say, like, lots of things, terrible things have happened in my life, or going on in my life. Some of them have actually happened. So what he was alluding to there is that most of what was happening in his life was actually going on in his head. So what it means is if we can come out of our head and come into our bodies and come into the present moment and just arrest those thoughts, then we're going to, as I say, live a happier and healthier life, or we give ourselves the chance of doing so. There's another sort of spiritual guru called Ram Dass, and I heard Tara Brach, a psychologist, author and meditation teacher, talking about him recently, and she heard him talking in the latter stages of his life, about his life, and he said that when he started meditating, he had all of these thoughts, he was always in judgment about himself or about others, anger, hatred, bitterness, jealousy, envy, anxiety, whatever it happened to be. He said, he became a meditation expert and engaged with it because he wanted to get rid of all those thoughts. And he discovered, as his life went on and 30 years into his meditation practice, that he still had feelings and thoughts of anger, bitterness, anxiety, whatever. But the difference was that he didn't pay attention to them. So what we know is that the thoughts don't go away. They keep coming. We are programmed to think as humans. That's part of our higher level ability, is the ability to think. And we also are programmed to have a negative bias because, survival in the forest in the jungle in prehistoric times was predicated on fight, flight, freeze. So I either froze if I thought a tiger was coming and hoped he would go off, or I'd fight him, or I'd run up a tree and get away from him. So that's where our fight, flight, freeze. Because if I didn't do one of those, my chances of survival decreased greatly. And that hasn't changed. So a lot of our thinking tends to be fear thinking. And if you haven't come across Tara Brach, I really encourage you to have a look at some of her videos on YouTube or her website, or subscribe to her channel. But loads of the things that she does are free. She just asks for donations, tarabrach.com, and she talks about this fear thinking and the trance of unworthiness, as she describes it. And in terms of the fear thinking, so if I show you the next image, which is a tree that has fallen down on a road, okay? And just think about your perception of this. So again, what is the first thing that comes to mind when you see this tree? So it might be, oh God, that reminds you of something, a storm, a traffic accident that you had, or somebody else had, and thinking about this as an obstacle, because this can be just a symbolic of the obstacles we reach in life. So I used this image in my session that I did in Blanchardstown Library. What was really interesting, I said, "What do you see?" And people said a tree in the road, and I said, "What's beyond the tree?" And lots of people had different, quite sort of optimistic things, about, I can see a house, and maybe it leads to a nice forest, and maybe I can go for a walk. But one guy said, "More trees down on the road." So his default that he recognized was his thinking was perhaps there are more trees. So a lot of this, and that's around a fear, perhaps there are more trees, perhaps there are more obstacles. So what we want to try and get into, and what I try to urge you to do, is something called metacognition. Metacognition, that simply means, in layperson's terms, it means thinking about our thinking. So I want you to imagine, just for the moment, and again, I'm not going to leave you there. I'm going to just get you into a state of thinking about something that is challenges you. So I want you to just think for a moment about the worst thought that you have about yourself. So just what is the worst thought you have about yourself? Some people are very lucky. They don't have any worst or bad thoughts about themselves, but most of us, normal, regular, everyday humans, have regular thoughts where we chastise ourselves for something. There tends to be one or a few on repeat. So we call them automatic negative thoughts. I'm so stupid. I can't believe I've done that again. I'm not organized. I'm too slow. I'm whatever. I don't take any risks. Compared to everybody else, So I just want you to have that thought for a moment. What's that thought you have about yourself? Okay. So second thing I'm going to ask you is just how you feel when you have that thought. So how do you feel when you have that thought? Or those thoughts? So live in the thought for a moment and experience the feelings. And I'm guessing, like our first scenario when I asked you to think of the happy and the sad, part of your life earlier, I'm guessing you feel a little bit deflated. You feel a bit down. You can feel yourself sinking a little. You're shrinking a little. And those are the feelings associated with that thought. So your body is reacting to the thought. And what I want to ask you now is the thought true? Is it a fact? For some of us, it could be, I've lost my job. I've lost my job and I'll never find another one. So I'll never find another one. I won't be able to pay the mortgage. I won't, the kids, are going to, lose friends because we won't have the same life, or whatever. Okay. Or I'm just stupid, or I did something silly today and, I'm just stupid. And is that a fact? Is it an absolutely uncontroversial scientific fact? And you might be arguing, going, well, yes, it is. But I mean, is it absolutely, no one can disprove this. And I'm guessing that most of you listening, that most of you are having thoughts that you can say, actually, no, that's not true. And yet I had the thought and I had the awful feelings associated with it. Now, if I go into neutral just for a moment, so no thought at all. So just experiment with that. So let's just all sit here. Take a breath, and actually this is probably easier to do because sometimes you might say, well, the thoughts keep on coming, and indeed they do. So this is easier to do if you take 3 really deep breaths. So inhale, and for as long as you can, and exhale, and inhale, and exhale, and inhale, and exhale. And when you're in that non-thinking space, because all what you're doing is focusing on your breathing, which is what people do in yoga and meditation, and sometimes in mindfulness. And I know a lovely lady called Rita who has done a piece on mindfulness for Blanchardstown Library, and I encourage you to look that up on their website. And recognize that in that space of no thinking, you're really calm. And when I ask people in my sessions, one-to-one or in a group, how do you, what's the feeling that you have now? And they go, much lighter, more content, more relaxed. And all we've done in that situation is take out the thinking. We've acknowledged that we've had the thought. We've acknowledged that, it was making us feel pretty grotty. We've recognized that. We've asked ourselves, is it true now? And we've thought, actually, it's not. Sometimes it is. Yeah, sometimes it is. If the thought is just about your health, for example, and you're in a bad space, then, it may be true. But it's just for the purpose, this exercise of recognizing that the majority of our thoughts and the negative ones are not true. And yet they become true because our brain believes everything we tell it. I always say, in the way that your phone, if you've left the speaker on, and your computer and all your devices are listening, the way you get your push notifications from the lovely advertisers because you've been talking about ice cream, or you've been talking about changing the car, and suddenly ads for ice cream and cars start popping up. And your brain is no different. So Google is listening, and he's giving you back what you're giving him. So if you tell yourself you're stupid, or you're no good, or you'll never, or you won't, then you're increasing the likelihood, how many times, exponentially, that those things will happen, or that will continue to become the reality. So we have to pay attention to the thought. So like the fear that we have, if we just push it to the back of our minds, it'll just keep popping back up because of that negativity bias in our brain, because we haven't solved the problem. But what we can do with the thought is we can say to ourselves in our metacognition now, wonder where that thought is coming from. So I keep saying to myself, I'll never get a job. I keep saying to myself, I'm no good. I keep saying to myself, I'm not confident. I keep saying to myself, I can't get organized. Where is that coming from? And is it true? No, it's not true. Could be an alternative thought. Well, I feel I can't get organized, but actually, I organized myself to get up this morning, get out of bed, get dressed. I organized the kids. Or if you've no kids, I took the dog for a walk, or I helped out a neighbor and I organized to give somebody a lift. There are lots of simple things that you can recognize. And so you can find evidence to the contrary. So you ask yourself the question, you get curious instead of judgmental about your thoughts. And you ask yourself questions around them. And it lightens things, and it helps you to be solution focused instead of problem focused. And you'll find that your body physiology changes, and so your mood lifts. And so those thinking patterns can become more healthy thinking patterns. And you can decide if you want to go one step further and replace them with positive thoughts. But sometimes your brain is just not in the mood for buying positive thoughts. But neutral is good. So look at this image. Okay, look at this image. And again, just let's do it now. What's the first thought that comes to mind? The first thought that comes to mind. Now, if you're a sailor, if you've done any sailing, you might be thinking like me, because I love boats. I love the water. And for me, when I see these images, I am just filled with excitement. I am filled with excitement. I'm going, oh, wow, that looks amazing. That looks fantastic. That looks thrilling. I'd love to be there. That boat is traveling at about 35-degree angle into the wind, into the waves. There's obviously some sort of a storm brewing. It could be a force 6, force 7. The waves are crashing over the side. You can see the clips. You can see the things here. Those cords down the middle. And the sailors are probably sheltering up this end of the boat, and they're all safely tacked to one of those side cords so that they won't fall into the sea. And they've all got their life jackets on. But But you might be thinking terrifying, awful, fear, and you can feel in your body. So regardless of whether it's a positive thought that you have, leading to an emotion, leading to the physiology, or a negative one, just notice what's happening to your body as you look at this. And if the thoughts are fearful and if the thoughts are impeding you, then ask yourself the question, what could you achieve if you had no fear? What could you do if you believed that everything was possible? What could you achieve if you had no fear? What could you do if you believed everything was possible? And isn't it powerful to know that arresting your thinking can just, in that moment, bring you to a better space, a sounder platform. In this case, if we think of the sailing analogy, bring you to land, bring you to solid ground, bring you to a restful moment of, okay, all of these thoughts I'm having, they're making me miserable. And if I just sit here in this moment and breathe deeply with no thought, I'm actually quite content. Life is actually, in this single moment, quite good. Perhaps very good. Perhaps even great. And you may have never allowed in your life a moment like this to happen before. But as I said at the start, life is not about the past or the future. It's only ever about this moment. And the path of your life is just the path of a series of moments. And that's great, because that means that if you start challenging your thinking, examining the truth of it, moving away from it if it's negative and it's not serving you, not to a positive thought, but to neutral, then you can change the entire pattern and path of your life. And that isn't fiction, that is fact. It's not a thought or an opinion, that is a fact. And I know because I have lived that fact myself, and I can tell you it is true. And you can start from right now, this day. You can watch this video over and over again. You can watch lots of other ones, the Tony Robbins, the Tara Brachs, the Eckhart Tolles, whoever you're having, Byron Katie's, to help yourself get into that space, the space which is simply this moment. So this is a lovely quote from Rumi. He's a poet, what they call a mystic. And the question is, why do we stay in the cage? Why do we stay in the prison when the door is so wide open? So why do we stay in the cage? This lovely songbird, look at him. Sitting in the cage when the door is just wide open. Rumi says, move outside the tangle of fear thinking. The entrance door to the sanctuary is inside you. So now that you realize it, you know that the cage door can be opened. You can free yourself from the thinking, and you can have and live a better life. And what's really lovely about all of this is when you start to do that, other people are inspired by you and they do the same. So you can change yourself first, and your partner can change if they're in the mode to do so, or your family, your friends, your community, because they see that you have now moved to a different pattern of thinking, that you are merely now the observer of your thoughts. You're not getting caught up in them. You're not doing things or doing things on the basis of thoughts that are not true. You're examining your thinking. You're standing back. And if they're true and they're accurate, you're saying, well, maybe, I haven't been living the life that, I could. And I think it would be better if I moved to a different pattern of behaving and speaking to people. And, then that's you getting real with yourself. That's great. But it's not to beat yourself up with. It's just to acknowledge it, be compassionate and go, well, I have learned to do that from maybe parents, my family, my upbringing. That's just part of my personality. But I recognize that there's another side to me too. And moving forward, I want to start living a different kind of life, a life that honors me and the people around me and the world I live in a whole lot better. So you can see this pattern, that we've described. The thoughts, nobody likes me, I always mess up. What are the feelings? Sad, self-conscious, anxious. The body gets tense, palpitations, no energy. And then we start withdrawing from others, stop doing the things you enjoy. So then the thought becomes the reality. Nobody likes me, I always mess things up. But if I have the thought, everybody likes me, everybody loves me, I guarantee you, thoughts like that will lead you to different feelings, will lead you to different physiology in your body, and it will get a different reaction from you, from the people around you, and from the world in general. And again, that's not a thought, that is a fact. So Ellis founded this lovely, it's called the ABC model, and then onto that, mutual people, I suppose, added variations, which became the ABCDE model. So we have the activating event. So perhaps somebody doesn't call you, they haven't called you in weeks. The beliefs about the events are adversity, that's it. That person doesn't like me, they don't want to be friends with me anymore. The last time, I knew there was something about the conversation we had. The emotional consequences, I start to feel sad, down, my heart gets, starts beating faster, my pulse gets faster, I tense up, my shoulders hunch, I start getting that pain in my back again or a headache. So the next bit, folks, the D is a really key bit. Disputations, challenging the self-defeating belief. Okay, so that's the challenging the thought. Is this reality? Let's take a look at this. What's really going on here? Okay, that person is just busy. I often don't hear from them for 3 weeks. Why am I focusing on that now? In fact, sometimes I don't call them for 3 weeks. Is it tit for tat? No. So starting to dispute. And then the effect or consequence of challenging the self-defeating belief is, of course, you start to feel a little bit better, you start to think a little bit better, and so you start a healthier cycle. Remember that your brain is forming new neural pathways all the time. So if you're feeding it with negativity, if you're eating rubbish in your brain, that's your thoughts. In the same way that if you ate McDonald's every day or ate white bread every day and butter and chips, you'd get a body and a physiology and a health to go with it. So if we think the equivalent of those things in our thoughts, then we get a brain to go with it. So the lovely thing is, the minute you start the new diet, either changing the McDonald's or changing the thoughts, you will start to see the difference. And as moments and moments and moments build into days and weeks and months and years, you will change the pattern of your life. And that has to be a good thing. So, folks, this has been a very short piece. Change your thinking, change your life. I hope you found it useful, and that I'll be seeing you again, either on video or in the library, perhaps for a session there. And in the meantime, I want you to look after yourselves. And if you feel so inclined, then go back to the start of this video and watch it all over again. Take care.